Rachel and I always love to have an amazing guest on the LinkedIn live show here on Wednesdays. And today we have one of not only my friends, but clients, Phil. Phil is the founder of American Dream U. And Phil, you're also a part of you started Clarity Council, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. So, we really wanted to have Phil on because he's got different events that kind of come up, but some of the different conversations, honestly, we should have really been recording a lot of the earlier conversations. So I'm going to try and get you back into the college side of it and really bring you and Phil back into these conversations. But, Phil, tell us a little bit more about like how you started American Dream U and, maybe we can kind of take the conversation from there.
Yeah, and we need to jump back into our conversation before you hit record because I know. We were in a zone and it was like we were all thinking of ways we can help people. And that's really why I started American Dream U. And it came out of frustration after 9/11, obviously, right? Everyone knows where they were at the time of 9/11. And I thought, I'm an entrepreneur. I need to do my part. Joining wasn't an option for me based on age and health and everything else. So I started this foundation 18 years ago. And the first 11 years, we helped the wounded, their families, spent a lot of time at Walter Reed, Bethesda, Brooke Army Medical Center. We helped build a Fisher House. We were a small part of a Fisher House that Denzel Washington was a part of. And he obviously wrote a much larger check than we do. He's an incredible human, very charitable, loves our military. And then as less men and women came back wounded, we'd go to Walter Reed and in 05, 06, there'd be literally hundreds and hundreds of people in rehab. And I was there in 2013 and there was 3 dudes in rehab. I'm like, this is great. I love talking to 3 people, but what can we do? So I talked to a general officer and I said, hey, listen, what can we do now? Because thank God, less men and women are coming back wounded. He says, for some, the transition is filled with a little uncertainty. Mm-hmm. So I said, tell me about how the transition works. He says, okay, well, they go to a 5-day class. And I'm like, okay, who runs it? And he goes, well, the department, the DOD, the Department of Labor and the VA runs it. And I said, okay, all right, well, that's interesting. And then they have people who have been in the military that, are ahead of the transition and all that stuff. And so I sat in on a class or 2 and I was like, wow, this is really interesting. But what I did was I looked at the engagement level of the soldiers and Marine sailors and airmen who were in those classes. We've all sat in, workshops where there's literally, I looked at the PowerPoint slides and I think at the end of the day, there's like 1,700 PowerPoint slides. And I was just like,
wow.
Yep. Death by PowerPoint.
Yeah, death by PowerPoint, right? Yes. Everyone who comes out of the military, they know how to create PowerPoint slides. And so I just, checked. A lot of them were on their phones. It wasn't because they weren't interested in their future. It was just because it wasn't engaging information. And I couldn't learn as a student in high school or in grade school sitting in front of a board. That's not the way I learned. In fact, I failed miserably. I had a 1.8 GPA my senior year and I couldn't play sports. I was devastated because that's not how I learned. Right. So I said, you know what? I told this general officer friend who's still a friend, he just retired as a 4-star. And I said, let me bring some entrepreneurs to a military base. So I brought the founder of Allegiant Airlines. I don't know if you've ever heard of Allegiant Airlines. I think they flew to Austin, who now has the Oakland Raiders Stadium. The founder there, Maury Gallagher, Ramit Sethi. Yep. I brought him. I don't know if you know Ramit, great guy. Yeah. Spoken a handful of times, incredible communicator. Forrest Griffin, the UFC fighter, which he was, in all honesty, the biggest hit at the base, right? So Ramit and Maury are used to people going, oh my gosh, you guys are great. And they all wanted to talk to Forrest.
Yeah.
And a couple other just amazing speakers, Ben Hugh, the founder of Cheeseburger. And, all these soldiers are sitting in the room like, all right, where's the PowerPoints? Where's the general officer telling me what I should be doing? And we just shared what was possible from an entrepreneurial kind of spirit. And all of a sudden they're leaning in, they're taking their pens out, they're starting to take notes. At the end of the day, the general said, when can you come back? And that was in June of 2013. And we've done 170 plus events since then, about 17,000 attendees. We've kind of lost track. And that's really how I got started. And, along the way, we've seen people, and we talked about this, Rachel, beforehand, we've seen people gain a little confidence when they see somebody who doesn't have, all the initials after their name. They may not have gone to college. We had the founder of Grunt Style Clothing. He had one credit for college, and that was first aid because he was a medic in the Army. It was his only credit. And he started this amazing clothing company.
Yeah.
Right. And so they lean in and they start going, wow, maybe I can do it.
Yeah.
And so that's really how we've gone. And so it's just been, I funded the organization for years. Our first donor was Dan Sullivan from Strategic Coach. I know you know Dan.
One of my past clients, yeah.
Yeah, I was in his program, and he leaned into me. He's a veteran. A lot of people don't know that. And he says, hey, we want to name you as the Game Changer of the Year and donate some money. I'm like, wow, that's awesome. He goes, do you know what that means? I go, Dan, you giving me a compliment is all I need. I don't know any details. He's got 6,000 people in his program. So he was our first donor and raised $150,000 for us, which was a game changer. That lasted us a couple of years. Most organizations go through money quickly. And then we had Advisors Excel, and we had the founder of Sam Adams Beer, Jim Cook, speak for us. And he was like, this is amazing. And he donated some money. So we still need help because we need to, there's 21,000 men and women leaving the military every month, not including spouses. So there's a lot more work for us to do. But let's get back to the conversation, because Rachel was just, nothing against you, Josh, but Rachel
yes.
brilliant.
Believe me, it's okay, Phil. Everyone knows. They come for Rachel.
No, they don't. We're on Josh's profile page, but that's sweet. No, it's such a great conversation. If you are listening, we love to know that you're here. Let us know where you're watching in from. Please, and get your questions ready. The topic that we were talking about was being a professional, a job seeker, and the process and mindset it takes to find a job. And that it's mindset and then tactical, right? And of course, we believe LinkedIn's primary business unit is the recruiting business unit. Primary audience is HR professionals. So not only do we know the mindset piece of being a job seeker to land a job, but tactically LinkedIn is an incredible platform. So I think, Phil, what is your perspective as you've been working with veterans in particular and spouses, which is a unique audience? How are they going about finding a job? How would you describe that process and the best way to go about it?
Yeah, great question. And LinkedIn's the place you need to be. It just really is. I mean, the military and people are getting a little better at understanding that.
Right.
But, it's really hard to find good people these days. It's a battle to find good people and hire people. And so I've had 3 openings in my day job, 4 openings, had over 900 resumes. And you guys should see these resumes. I mean, first off, I know you need a resume, but boy, they need help.
Right.
I couldn't tell if you were going to say they're really good or really bad.
Oh, horrific. For the most part, horrific. Just some of them are good. And literally in my job description, I say in the very first line, I said, read this job description to the entire end, because we're going to ask you to do something.
Right.
To know that you're paying attention. So out of 900 resumes, I had 11 that put "Go Knights Go" on the cover letter.
Wow.
Clicking through.
This is so good. Oh my gosh. I hope that all of my people are listening to this. That is so genius of you, because all of the students, all people are just mass resume sending right now, all the time. And what that little trick, 11 out of, what was it, 900? Is that what you said?
I'll send you a screenshot. It is
0%. Wow.
Yeah. And what's upsetting is, in my head, I go, okay, I'm only going to hire somebody who follows the directions. Because if they, how they do something is how they do everything. I think that's a Jim Rohn quote or whatever. And so I'm thinking, and another rule is when someone interviews, they have to send at least an email thank you.
Right.
And write something. And so, after every interview, I'm like, oh my God, please have them send a follow-up.
There's like a really good conversation, and then you're hoping they don't mess this one up.
Yeah. And then I make all these promises to God, like, okay, I won't do this anymore. And I won't say what those things are, but it's just crazy that no one does. And then they'll follow up 3 weeks later. Oh, have you made a decision?
Mm-hmm. How do you feel about the handwritten note?
Love it. That's
Love
even
the
better.
Handwritten note too. I know, me too. Love it.
And we teach that. We're like, we're like, okay, here's an envelope, right? Does everyone know what this looks like?
Yeah.
This piece of paper.
Here's a stamp and a piece of paper. Have it in your car. So you take the person's card right when it's fresh and you write a note. It can be 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Rachel, amazing meeting you. I didn't realize that you did all this work with UT students. It's incredible. I love what you're doing. I question you about hanging out with Josh, but that's another story. You put it in the envelope with the stamp, go, and they get it the next day. It's not easy. It's not hard.
And do you know what I love too, Phil? Take exactly what you did and do it on LinkedIn too. Because the personalized invite and message.
Personalized message just alone. I mean, we do it all the time. Yeah.
Mailed letter. And so if you hit them both, I mean, just think about how much you can stand out. Like,
the bar is so low.
That's sad, but yeah.
Incredibly low. Like Josh, I had no idea that you worked with Dan Sullivan and some of the other people on LinkedIn. And I like their stuff. I follow their stuff. I'm like, oh my gosh, Dan is creating great content. Dan wasn't creating anything. You were creating all the content.
I actually created his first profile.
It's incredible.
On LinkedIn. Well, now, again, they've taken over so much. And I mean, the content that they have is just, when you work with someone like that, I mean, the content's amazing, but how do you actually present it in a way that people actually engage? And I mean, that's where I want everyone to understand is like, I don't care if it's, it's Phil, it's me, it's Dan Sullivan. Like, you have to be able to kind of connect and be able to understand how to be able to actually engage with your audience. The same thing with landing a job. Like if you're going in for an interview, it's not just the interview, it's the follow-up afterwards. And that's where everyone kind of thinks. Like so many people are like, we talk about it all the time on LinkedIn. If you put out great content, great. And you sit back and go, all right, they're going to come. No, it's if the people engage, then you're reaching out, you're appreciating, hey, like the thank you letter, right? Hey, I saw you guys, Anil's on here right now. Anil, thank you so much for listening to our LinkedIn Live. Just want to reach out and say thank you, right? These little pieces like that go so far. So when you're talking about going in for an interview, going in to be able to connect, to find opportunity, these are just things that our mothers taught us how to be able to do growing up. We're just doing them in real life now. We have to remember that not as adults. You don't just lose these ways of being able to show respect and appreciation. As a child, you need to be able to take that into our adult lives as well too.
100%. And Josh, you've been so generous with American Dream U and given way more of your time than I know. And sometimes I feel guilty. We had a conversation last week. I'm like, oh gosh, Josh is just doing such a crushing job for us. He's just amazing. It's, again, let's go back to the bar.
Yeah.
Right. The bar is people are clicking on ZipRecruiter and all the other ones and submitting. They're not reading anything. They're not doing any follow-up.
Right.
All you have to do is read the job description, mention something in there, do a little recon on the company, right? Like, oh, I see standout authority and it's, you started at this time and I see that, you guys don't have this type of position or this, I noticed. You just do that. You're going to get an interview without a doubt, because again, the bar is so low. I've had people walk into my office for an interview and I'm like, hey, they get to me and I go, hey, so what do you know about, my company? And they go, oh, I know you guys do some benefits and stuff. I'm like, okay.
No research.
Tell me more. Zero. Like when I was looking for a job in the early 90s, research was a little tougher.
Yeah.
Yes.
What does it take to do research now? What does it take to go on the LinkedIn page of someone that's interviewing you, because you know who that person is, the founder, right? Some of the people there, and just going, oh, I noticed that, whatever. And in my community, in the veteran community, I'm not a veteran, but what I share is go on and see who's served in the Army. Maybe they served at the same base at a different time and go, hey, we must have crossed paths, when I was transitioning from Bragg to Benning or whatever the case. That just opens up a conversation and a door to make you more likable human, more the communication that you just talked about.
Yeah. Well, I mean, people look for those things, right? I mean, they look for commonalities, and that's the beauty of social right now, especially with looking for a job, anything. Like Rachel's done this so many times, before she left corporate, but to be able to look at their LinkedIn, to be able to find a commonality and actually start a conversation, because a conversation can turn into a relationship can turn into an opportunity.
Well said.
Yeah.
Well said. Yeah. Yeah. And we talked a little bit before, we were both saying we should have all say we should have recorded this. But one thing that I found is if you're in a current position, right, or you're a student or whatever the case may be, and I learned this from a guy named Steve Sisler, who we know, brilliant guy, you guys, everyone should look him up. How you leave something is how you're going to enter into something new.
Right.
Okay. So if you finish strong at UT MBA school, right, and you just don't do the bare minimum, you crush whatever the final paper. I got my MBA, but it was online, and I think I paid for a certificate, and I don't really know anything.
You got me beat, so it's okay.
Yeah, believe me, I learned Excel, and that was about it. I did that off of a bet because I couldn't get into college. But anyways, so how you leave is how you enter something new. Okay, so how you leave the military is how you're going to enter something new. How you leave a relationship, could be a spouse, it could be whatever, is how you're going to enter into that new relationship. And I think that's very, very important. And the other thing that's really important too, if you guys familiar with Ian Altman?
I am, yeah.
Yeah, so he's spoken for us a couple times, and his language is really good. There are a lot of questions that people being interviewed can ask to find out what that person is looking for, right? And I'm going to totally mock it up, but screw up what Ian said because he's a really good communicator. It's like, hey, someone who's had this position before, what qualities did they have? What did you like about that person who had this position before? What did they do really well? And then the person will tell you what they did really well, and that's half the battle. And again, Josh, I'm going back to what both of you guys are saying is, when I'm sitting across for somebody at a final interview, I look at it, same thing with clients. If I'm at the mall, not that people go to malls anymore, but let's say I see them out at the coffee place, am I going to duck behind a wall to avoid them? Or am I going to be happy to see them? And the same thing when someone's being interviewed, I don't care if it's an MBA candidate or an initial level person, they want to know that this person is going to be a great team member, that they're going to be, sociable, but not over sociable. They want to be respectful. They want to see that. And I think a lot of people don't understand that going in. And Rachel, you have more experience than I have in that. Tell me if I'm wrong.
No, I mean, really what you're talking about is building your personal brand. Mm-hmm. And doesn't matter if you're looking for a job or you're owning your own business or you're an employee, if you're listening. Hi, Tammy, we see you. Wherever you're at, that your personal brand is how you see yourself and how others see you. Mm-hmm. And so when we are not confident, we talked about confidence, right? And that's mindset. And the job seeking process is not a confidence building process. Mm-hmm. That's not what it is. The people, the process, the people you talk to, the people around you, because you're competitive, the whole process is not very positive. Therefore, we go into those situations with really feeling less than. When instead, Phil, what we were talking about and what I do when I coach the students and work with them as an industry consultant is say, you're amazing. You're amazing. You have an amazing story. We need to figure out what your story is. And that's not reading off your resume. And then when you go into the interview and they ask you, tell me about yourself, you don't just go through the list. You say, you have this confidence and you understand I'm first generation. And the reason why I'm interested in this job is because of XYZ, your founder. They can tell their story and build it into the company after they've done that research. So, Phil, you were talking a lot about that too. And a lot of the work that you do with American Dream U is on the confidence sector. So can you elaborate a little bit on that end and how you're building confidence into the whole process?
Yeah. And this is a human issue. It's not a military issue, right? Because
absolutely,
our military has all the confidence in the world to go, they train, they deploy, they fight together, they live together, right? They have extreme confidence. I know men and women who have volunteered to go back on a deployment because that's where they feel most comfortable.
Right.
Feeling most comfortable going into a job or a job interview and that whole process, they've never really had a job interview process while they're in the military. Right? Their pay is regulated. They don't negotiate their salary. There's all this kind of stuff. So this is very new to them. So what we found, And listen, I'm a guy with super low confidence and super low self-esteem. Like I struggle. I wish I could turn my picture off on the camera. I don't like looking at myself. When they gain a little bit of confidence, like when you talk to them and go, hey, listen, the bar is low. Like, let's create a story for you. And they get a little win. They make new connections on LinkedIn. They have great conversations. That's going to build confidence so that when they have to make a big decision, they have built up small wins, right? I don't know what it is, right? They're sitting different on. That is huge. That is absolutely huge. I interviewed a couple hundred veterans. This was a handful of years ago, wrote a book called Mission Next. I had someone help me write it. This guy had the greatest idea for job seekers. So what he did was he listed his top 50 companies that he wanted to work for. Okay.
Right.
And he was brand new to interviewing. And he started at the 50th on LinkedIn. And he got as many interviews as he could, and he practiced. And he was like, oh, that was horrible. Wrote down in the car all the questions they asked him, how he responded, and he had a journal. Then by like the 40th, he was really dialed in. And these were like, he started at the 50th. I asked him, I said, the top 10, your top 10, how many job offers do you get? And I'm probably wrong, but I think he said 7 or 8.
Wow.
So because he had built all the confidence,
right,
and he crafted his story, and it got better, and he got better at research, he got better at questions. So I said, what did you do? And I said, he goes, it was a tough decision. So that's the position that people should be in, is having a really difficult decision on which job to take.
Right.
But it takes confidence to be able to go in there and do that. I don't know if that makes sense, or you think that would even be useful.
I will tell you,
it's like career story,
I've been rejected from more jobs than I've been accepted. That's for sure. When I was in the interview process to land my MBA internship, which is really the way in which you get your full-time job, I probably interviewed with 15 different companies, from Coke to Pepsi to Nestle to General Mills to the list goes on. And I got rejected from all of them, maybe second round interview. And the people around me were getting the jobs. And I was like, what am I? Like, we are in the same class. We're similar, right? But I was learning along the way about myself. How do I better present myself? How do I have the better questions? Because I was going through all of these interviews. And I always tell this to job seekers. It only takes one. And the one that I got was the one everyone wanted, and that was Microsoft. And it was the absolute best opportunity in my entire life. And I always say, like, I wouldn't have gotten that and done the whole journey if I hadn't gotten all the rejections and been ready for that moment when I was being in the final round, 4 interviews and all that. So, Phil, I personally have experienced this so many times. And the job, when you go into the UT MBA program, the first day they show you the journey of the MBA. And it's basically this mountain of like falls and pivots and climbing. And like, don't worry, you're going to get there, but you're going to fall a lot. And it's going to be really bumpy up to the road, but we got you. And that's what the confidence piece, I think, that you're talking about, and really getting support. And you're right that veterans in particular, I've worked with many of them, and it's like, you're incredible. What you're capable of, you're not translating that into civilian language. I sat down with a few vets. I said, why are you calling me a civilian? That's not our language. First things first, talk like the people that are interviewing you. Know your audience. You have to know your audience. And so that is a really big lesson. If you're listening and you're thinking about the job, when Josh and I are talking to our audience, we also know that we're talking to entrepreneurs and business owners and job seekers. And each one of them requires a nuance because they each have a different need and pain point.
I thought you were going to say that, when Josh was interviewing me to, for the job at Standard Authority. And I was like, oh yeah, I worked over the coals.
This is
hard.
His ongoing joke, Phil. My employee over here is what he likes to say. I'm like,
yeah. Well, I hope you negotiated a good deal for yourself.
Yeah. This interview process was included a marriage.
Yeah. You know what's great about what you said, and I hope people really click back and listen to that over again because it's so powerful, is it took a whole bunch of no's to get, it's fall 7 times, get up 8.
Yes.
And thank God, you had the energy and the know-how to know that, listen, it's going to fall. And I love that graphic. It's the same thing with interviewing.
See that with entrepreneurs too. Yeah. I mean, I've seen the exact same thing on the entrepreneur side.
Oh my gosh.
It's not just one career. It's like,
it's true.
Life.
Because getting clients is the same thing, except like it's what I'm learning from Josh is how you craft those conversations and getting clients and understanding what the client needs. So then how do you back into that surface? And it's the same thing when you're interviewing. Mm-hmm. You need to position yourself on how what you do, it fulfills their need. But he's really good at getting clients, a little bit better than me, I'd say.
It's not getting clients. It's building relationships.
It's building relationships.
And this is where I want
to make a sale,
everyone to kind of think about that, like what Phil's talking about, like laying the perfect job. It's building that relationship, and so that's kind of where it goes out. And Phil, I know that you've got your cohort, your event coming up, and I want to make sure that everyone understands it, because like what we're talking about here is just the cusp of all these different aspects. And I know you are really going to be diving deep to take not only veterans, but anyone looking to be able to land that perfect job and be able to really give them all the tools, the resources, and the confidence to be able to actually help them achieve those aspects.
Yeah. We have some cohorts coming up, and we're working on getting some accredited classes as well. And we talked about that too. It's like there's a huge need to learn how to use the tool that 80% of companies use to hire people, and that's LinkedIn.
Yeah.
There's really no courses in college. Not that I'm aware of, that are good. But yeah, so we have these cohorts, and basically they're completely free, and they're for anybody who's either in the military, who's a veteran, who's a spouse, a dependent, or, let's say there's someone listening in your audience and their father was in the military and served 30, 40 years ago, but wants to join. As long as you're tied to the military, we're going to let people in.
Love that.
Right.
Curtis, your dad.
Yeah. My father was in the military. So in the Navy. So yeah.
Yeah. So, and we really focus on 3 areas, and it's relationships, exactly what we're talking about here, how to build relationships. And in a COVID world, it's how to build relationships now on LinkedIn. Yeah. We talk about wellness, because a lot of people coming out of the military and a lot of people in general are in pain, right? They're not sleeping. They're not hydrated. We talk a lot about that. And then we talk about money. And that's everything from personal finances to how do you negotiate a salary when you've really never had experience in negotiating a salary.
Yeah.
And that's always a difficult situation, because that's usually one of the questions they ask. Like, I always ask, what are your salary expectations? And I hear people give me ranges of like, oh, I'm good with anything from 35,000 to 55,000. I'm like, holy cow, that's a pretty big range for this position, for an admin.
Yeah.
So those are the 3 areas that we really focus on. And then we get into a whole bunch of great conversations. And we talked about this before. A lot of our behaviors today, we got from our parents, teachers when we were growing up. And so they're patterns, and they're running subconsciously, and we don't even know they're running. And so when you can identify those, your story is now, a lot of people create stories, and we talked about this, Rachel, that they're living based on their story, right? Oh, and my story used to be, oh, my father was born in Sicily. He was angry. That's why I'm angry.
Right. Yep.
I lived up to that story. And so what I noticed that was terrifying to me was that one of my kids was doing the same things I was doing to his wife that I did to my wife. And I'm not proud of it. So I didn't tell him. I just showed him better ways to behave. I've been married 30 years. I just celebrated my 30th wedding anniversary. Thank God I have the most patient wife on the planet. People have a story and they live up to it. You do not have to live up to your story. You can create a future for yourself. Exactly what you said, Rachel. How do you craft that story? And when some of those old patterns come up, you do a split-second pause and you go, oh, that's not me. Those are my patterns. Right? And I know some people who just, me in particular, when things were going really well, I grew up in chaos. I grew up in absolute chaos. So when things were going well in my life, you know what I did? I created chaos because that's where I felt comfortable.
Right.
And that's, my wife didn't like the uncertainty of when is chaos coming. My kids didn't like that. People in the military, same thing. They thrive in chaos.
Right.
And so, again, we're getting a little bit off topic, but I think these are really important when you're looking for an opportunity to recognize what your story is. And you don't have to live up to that story.
And I love what the course laying out the relationships and the health and all of these pieces are really important. It's a very stressful time to think about what the heck do I want to do with my life? How am I going to make money? And you become so consumed with that, that's really important. And especially I find for the, younger generation or, just it's not prioritized. It's so go. So it really seems like
these
an
three
amazing
things
course.
This is important for, I don't care what part of life you're talking about, Phil. I mean, for them to be able to get access to a course and be able to be part of a cohort like you're building right there, those three aspects, relationship, health, and wealth, I mean, they're important in every person's life. So I would say almost anything, like, I don't care where you're at. If you've got a tie to the military and American Dream, you and Phil, you guys are offering this. Like, this is something that I think everyone should be a part of, no matter what part of your life in, because it can add benefit. I don't care if you're an entrepreneur, if you're looking for a job, if you're, a house husband, right? I didn't want to say housewife because that's what everyone looks at, like whatever it might be, right? Rachel's laughing at me. And, these are those things that you kind of go through and they're really, really important. So Phil, I mean, thank you so much for spending time with us today. Thank you for everything that you've done. And, where I see, it looks like Skylar actually put in here, where they can go to be able to sign up. And when's the next cohort?
Next cohort is in September. Maybe okay. Skylar can put the exact dates in there. And okay. I think she has a registration link in there, but the date would be helpful as well. The date would be helpful. And yeah, it's super casual. It's an open conversation. We're not going to PowerPoint people to death, during these calls for sure. But when you sleep better, when you're not in pain, when your finances are in order, you tend to make better decisions, right? Yes. You both know people that have made decisions to get a job 100% based on money.
Yeah.
You and I, we all know every study shows that there's very little correlation between happiness and making money. Harvard's done studies, MIT. Now, we all need our basic needs met, but when you're in a situation where you have to get a job, and I know guys in the military who are taking contracting jobs overseas because they need the money, and there's some other reasons too. Again, they like that chaos. But yeah, listen, what you're all doing, and Rachel, we're gonna have to connect because you said so many brilliant things. I mean, Josh, always too. I haven't had a chance
to sit back and everyone knows, like, every time they Rachel and I get together, they go, okay, now I see who the wizard behind you is.
This topic in particular, I can really relate to and go.
You guys are like a power couple. It's like a good-looking power couple that you see.
That's for the Bealeys.
Yeah, like you see them standing like this back to back.
Oh, we have some photos like that.
Yeah, you guys are great. And what people may or may not know about you is that, and I've had one-on-one conversations a lot with Josh, you guys are just good, caring people that just want to help. Yeah, you run a business, you want to, succeed financially, but there's a great quote by Emerson on how he defines success. And if you haven't seen it, look it up and I'll share it. You guys are the epitome of that. You guys are making people's lives better and you're making people breathe easier. And especially going on in this world right now with political divide, with sickness divide, with now, parts of the world are on fire as we're filming this. You are allowing people to have that ability to breathe easier, and that is worth a ton. So
thank you, Phil.
Thank you very much, Phil.
And this is why we align ourselves with, organizations and other humans like yourself, because we all rise up when we rise up together. And that is truly the only way for us to be able to do this. So, Phil, thank you so much for your time today. I hope everyone listens to this. Share it, please. Give us a comment. And then if you are part of the military, if you know someone that's part of the military, I don't care what association, like Phil said, if it's a, second or third degree in your family, you need to be part of this next cohort that's coming up and be able to reach out to Phil. So Phil, thank you so much. We appreciate you.
Thanks, Phil. Have a great week,
course,
everyone.
We'll see you at Texas State in a month, Josh.
Looking forward to it. We'll see you then.
Rachel, you guys will. Take care.
Always love to bring her. Thank you. Bye, Phil. Bye, everyone.